They gave him the ugliest and tallest girl as a prize, then discovered his true power. Ethan had never seen anything like the arena before. It stretched higher than the tallest building on Earth, with walls of shimmering metal that reflected the bright lights above. Alien banners fluttered along the upper levels, their strange symbols moving as though alive. The crowd was massive, thousands of eyes staring down from platforms suspended in midair, watching with curiosity, amusement, and in some cases, contempt. He felt small. The other contestants were towering creatures, some with 4 legs, some with multiple arms, some glowing with natural energy. They moved with confidence, muscles rippling, eyes sharp and calculating. Each of them was bred for strength or skill, their species champions sent to prove the superiority of their kind. And then there was Ethan, a human. Average height, average build, unassuming in every way. A species the aliens considered weak, fragile, and unremarkable. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to stand tall. He reminded himself that humans had survived in impossible conditions, had adapted when the odds were against them, and had a kind of resilience no other species had. It wasn't physical power that would see him through, it was ingenuity, adaptability, and courage. He had survived impossible odds on Earth before, this would be no different. The first challenge began with a low hum that shook the arena floor. Massive gates opened, revealing a maze of platforms suspended in a glowing void. Contestants were expected to navigate it, retrieve a flag from the center, and return to the starting point. The aliens had made it clear that many had failed before. Ethan scanned the maze carefully. There were traps visible only when shadows shifted, platforms that would tilt under weight, and creatures lurking in the void, waiting to knock competitors off. He didn't panic. He took a deep breath, observing the movements of the other contestants. Many relied on brute strength, leaping without care, misjudging distances. One of the 4-armed aliens attempted to jump across a floating bridge too wide for its stride, falling into the void with a startled scream. Another tried to run past a shifting platform and was sent spinning into the air, barely catching the edge with one hand. Ethan stepped carefully, testing the platforms with light taps of his feet. He noticed a pattern. Some platforms tilted only if someone heavier than him stood on them. Some traps triggered only when multiple creatures crossed at the same time. Slowly, he made his way through the maze, timing his movements with precision, relying on observation and quick thinking rather than raw power. Halfway through, he encountered a creature with 6 legs and glowing eyes. It blocked the narrow path, growling low, its teeth sharp enough to pierce steel. Most contestants would have tried to fight it head-on. Ethan stopped, thinking he couldn't match its strength. Instead, he noticed a thin ledge above the creature, partially hidden by the glow of the arena. He climbed silently, the creature's gaze following him but unable to reach. From above, he jumped past it, landing lightly on the next platform. The crowd murmured. Some laughed, thinking it a lucky escape, but Ethan knew it was careful planning, not luck, that kept him alive. By the time he reached the center, retrieving the flag, he was not the fastest, but he was the only one to avoid serious injury. The aliens in the stands exchanged glances. Humans were clever, yes, but cleverness alone could not win the tournament. Strength and speed ruled here, or so they thought. The second challenge was a test of combat and strategy. Contestants were placed on floating islands, each equipped with weapons from their home worlds. Ethan had a basic plasma staff, lightweight and versatile, but hardly the weapon of a champion. The other contestants carried massive blades, energy shields, or weapons that could fire destructive blasts. He stood quietly as the signal began. Many rushed forward aggressively, attacking without thought. Ethan waited, watching patterns, observing weaknesses. One alien with a spiked tail charged blindly at a competitor, only to fall into a trap Ethan had noticed. A thin energy net that snapped shut, immobilizing the creature. Ethan moved next, using misdirection. He dodged attacks not by raw speed, but by predicting where opponents would strike. He used the staff to deflect blows, to trip enemies over their own weapons, and to push them toward traps. By the end of the combat round, he had incapacitated more contestants than anyone had expected, without sustaining serious injuries. After the challenges, the aliens conferred quietly. Ethan had survived when others had fallen, and he had done it without the strength or firepower typical of a champion. There was a tension in the arena, an unspoken acknowledgement that something unusual was happening. A human, they thought, could never dominate this tournament. Yet here he was, still standing, still moving forward, still alive. Finally, it was time for the prize ceremony. Ethan, exhausted but unbowed, stepped onto the platform. The aliens who presided over the tournament watched with thinly veiled irritation. The human had earned the right to choose a prize, or so the rules stated, but the Zarath had no intention of honoring him fully. Instead, they had prepared what they believed would humiliate him. The doors opened, and out stepped Lyra. She was immense, taller than any human Ethan had ever seen, her frame strong and imposing. Her features were sharp, unconventional, and deliberately emphasized by the Zarath to make her seem awkward by human standards. She walked with confidence, clearly unimpressed by the ceremony. The crowd laughed, or at least many of the aliens did. "They give him this?" a voice hissed from the stands. "A human gets the ugliest, tallest female as a prize? How pathetic." Ethan looked at Lyra and smiled warmly. He stepped forward and extended a hand. "Thank you," he said simply. The sincerity in his voice was unexpected. The Zarath looked on, stunned. No human had ever accepted an insult with gratitude, let alone treated it with respect. Lyra raised an eyebrow. She had expected disdain, shock, or ridicule. Instead, she found a quiet strength in the human's eyes. "You really are strange," she said, though not unkindly. Ethan shrugged, still smiling. "I've learned that appearances don't matter," he replied. "What matters is what someone can do, how they think, and how they treat others." The alien spectators were puzzled. Some murmured to each other. This human was not reacting the way any species would expect. Lyra, though initially irritated by her assignment, felt a flicker of curiosity. This human was different from any she had met. There was power in his calm, intelligence in his quiet movements, and confidence that didn't come from brute strength. The Zarath, however, were growing impatient. "He cannot possibly be worthy of such a prize," one elder said. "He is human, weak." Simple, but even they could not deny that Ethan had outperformed every champion in the tournament, navigating every challenge with cunning and courage. As the ceremony ended, Ethan and Lyra were escorted to the ship that would take them back toward human space. The journey ahead was long and tensions were high. Lyra, despite her pride, could not hide her interest in the human beside her. He moved with thoughtfulness, checking equipment, planning their route, and speaking calmly to the alien crew without anger or arrogance. Ethan, meanwhile, considered the journey as another challenge. He had won the tournament, but the real test would begin now. The Zarath expected him to fail, to be unworthy of the prize they had mocked him with. But he had survived impossible odds before. He had faced predators, natural disasters, and conflicts that no other human had endured. He had learned to adapt, to improvise, and to trust his instincts. As the ship lifted off, Lyra watched Ethan from across the cabin. She had seen many humans, but none like him. His confidence was quiet, unassuming, yet absolute. She realized that she had underestimated him, and perhaps herself. Perhaps the so-called ugliest and tallest prize was not a punishment, but an opportunity for both of them to discover what humans were truly capable of. The stars stretched out before them, glittering in the endless void. Ethan looked out at the expanse, his mind already calculating the obstacles ahead, the dangers that might await, and the strategies he could use. He smiled. He was human, yes. But humans were clever, resourceful, and unbreakable in ways the Zarath had yet to understand. And Lyra, towering and formidable, would soon learn that the prize they had given him was not a joke. It was a partnership that would reveal the full extent of his true power. The ship hummed softly as it drifted through the void, carrying Ethan and Lyra away from the tournament. Arena. The Zarath crew monitored them from the control panels, their eyes sharp and alert, though not entirely convinced of Ethan's capabilities. For the aliens, humans were unpredictable at best, weak at worst. But Ethan had proven himself in ways they did not fully understand, and that unsettled them. Ethan moved through the cabin with quiet efficiency. He inspected the ship's engines, the navigation systems, and the life support modules. It was not because he needed to. He had been given competent alien crew, but because he wanted to understand. Every control panel, every wire, every blinking light was an opportunity. Humans survived by learning, by noticing patterns, and by solving problems others ignored. Lyra observed him silently, arms crossed. She had expected a brash, arrogant human, someone who would revel in victory and dismiss her presence. Instead, he was calm, focused, and patient. He didn't need to assert dominance, yet somehow he commanded respect. She found herself intrigued. "Why do you care so much about this ship?" she asked, stepping closer. Her height and mass dwarfed his, but her tone held no threat, only curiosity. Ethan looked up and smiled. "Because it's our lifeline. If we don't understand it, we won't survive the journey. It doesn't matter who designed it. What matters is that we know how to make it work when something goes wrong." Lyra tilted her head, impressed despite herself. Most humans wouldn't even touch it. They would just let the crew do their job. "That's true," Ethan replied, "but humans have a habit of surviving, and surviving often means doing what others won't." The first obstacle came sooner than expected. A rogue asteroid field appeared on their navigation charts, moving unpredictably, larger and denser than what the ship's autopilot could handle safely. The Zarath crew tensed, hands hovering over controls, waiting for orders. Ethan didn't hesitate. "Manual override," he said firmly. "I'll pilot us through." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "You can handle this?" "I can," he replied simply. He climbed into the pilot's seat, scanning the field. The asteroids shifted in erratic patterns, some glowing with natural energy that could disrupt the ship's shields. Ethan observed, calculating the timing and distance between each rock. His hands moved over the controls with precision, adjusting thrust and angle, predicting collisions before they occurred. The ship twisted and weaved through the field. Lyra held onto a nearby console, her sharp eyes tracking every move. Some asteroids grazed the hull, sparks flying, but Ethan's strategy worked. By the time they cleared the dense core, the crew was stunned. The Zarath had never seen a human pilot with such instinctive understanding of movement and space. "You're incredible," Lyra admitted quietly, letting a hint of admiration slip. Ethan shrugged modestly. "I've learned to watch, to notice what others miss, that's all." For hours, the ship glided through safer territory. Lyra and Ethan talked for the first time, not about battle or tactics, but about their lives. Lyra had grown up in the Zarath Empire, trained in science and strategy, but rarely allowed to make her own choices. Ethan shared stories of Earth, of cities, deserts, oceans, and human ingenuity. Lyra listened, fascinated by the resilience and creativity he described. "You humans survive against impossible odds," she said, "but you're not physically strong like the Zarath." "Strength isn't just muscles," Ethan replied. "It's the mind, the heart, and the ability to adapt. Physical power can be measured, but human ingenuity is unpredictable. That's why we survive." Her expression softened. She had expected arrogance or weakness. Instead, she found quiet confidence and a calm strength she hadn't anticipated. Slowly, her pride began to shift, replaced by respect. Their next challenge arrived in the form of space pirates. A group of marauders intercepted the ship, demanding surrender. They were fast, aggressive, and heavily armed. The Zarath crew tensed, ready to fight, but Ethan stepped forward. "Let me handle this," he said. The pirates hailed them, weapons charging. "Surrender your cargo and passengers, human, or die." Ethan smiled faintly. "I don't think so, but I have an idea that might help us all walk away safely." He instructed Lyra to access the ship's systems with him. Together, they rerouted power to the shields, creating a pattern of energy pulses that mimicked multiple ships. To the pirates' sensors, it appeared as though several armed vessels surrounded them. Panic spread among the attackers. "Do something," one pirate shouted, but their fear was already taking hold. Ethan moved the ship slowly, almost lazily, yet every maneuver was calculated to exploit the pirates' confusion. They fired, missing entirely as the ship twisted in impossible ways. The illusion worked perfectly. After minutes that felt like hours, the pirates retreated, convinced they had underestimated the humans' allies. Lyra couldn't hide her amazement. "That was incredible," she said, shaking her head. "You didn't fight them. You didn't even threaten them, you just tricked them." Ethan smiled. "Humans survive by thinking ahead. Brute force isn't always the answer. Sometimes it's knowing how the other side reacts that makes all the difference." The incident spread quickly through the ship's communication channels. Even the Zarath crew began to murmur in disbelief. This human, whom they had once mocked, was demonstrating a type of power they couldn't measure, a mind capable of seeing solutions no one else could. Days passed and the journey continued. Ethan and Lyra developed a rhythm, working together to navigate hazards, manage supplies, and maintain the ship. Their respect for each other grew. Lyra, once proud and dismissive, now relied on Ethan's insights. She began to share her own skills in engineering and strategy, revealing that she was not just a prize but a capable partner. One evening, as they floated through a calm stretch of space, Lyra spoke quietly. "I never expected a human to be like this. You think differently. You notice things, plan ahead, and stay calm under pressure. I thought I was helping you, but it seems you're helping me." Ethan looked at her, a faint smile on his lips. "We help each other survive, that's what makes us stronger." It was the first time Lyra felt truly understood by another being. The arrogance she had carried melted into genuine curiosity and a growing admiration. She realized that the Zarath had underestimated both of them. Not just Ethan, but the combination of human ingenuity and her own abilities. Together, they were a force the Empire could not have predicted. Then came another test, a rogue gravitational storm, massive and unpredictable, threatening to tear the ship apart. The Zarath crew panicked, their algorithms unable to cope with the storm's rapid fluctuations. Ethan didn't hesitate. He studied the patterns, observed the shifts in gravitational pull, and calculated the precise adjustments needed to stabilize the ship. Lyra worked alongside him, managing power systems and shields, following his instructions to the letter. For hours, they navigated the storm, twisting through turbulence, dodging debris, and keeping the ship intact. When they emerged on the other side, unscathed, the crew was silent. Even the Zarath, usually stoic and unshakable, looked at Ethan with a new kind of respect. He had survived another impossible test, not through strength, but through mind, intuition, and courage. Lyra finally spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "I understand now. The aliens gave you this prize because they thought you would fail, but they didn't realize you're not just surviving, you're excelling." Ethan nodded. "And you're not just a prize either, you're a partner. Together, we're stronger than they expected." For the first time since being assigned as his prize, Lyra felt a sense of purpose. She realized that appearances, size, and social standing were meaningless compared to skill, intelligence, and courage. And beside Ethan, she felt the kind of power the Zarath could never understand. A human power, unpredictable, creative, and unstoppable. As the stars stretched endlessly around them, Ethan and Lyra worked together in quiet harmony, navigating dangers that would have defeated most species. Each challenge they faced revealed more of Ethan's true power, not brute force, but a mind capable of seeing solutions others missed, anticipating danger before it arrived, and inspiring others to rise above their limits. The journey ahead promised more challenges, more tests of skill and courage. But together, Ethan and Lyra knew they could survive anything. They were not just a human and a Zarath. They were a team, combining intellect, intuition, and strength in ways no one had anticipated. The Empire had given Ethan the ugliest and tallest prize as a mockery. But in reality, they had unknowingly forged a partnership that would shake the galaxy. And for Ethan, that was just the beginning. The stars stretched endlessly as the ship glided silently through uncharted space. Ethan and Lyra had settled into a careful routine, each day presenting small challenges and occasional dangers. But nothing could prepare them for the sudden alert that shook the cabin. "Unidentified fleet approaching fast," the Zarath navigator shouted. The screens lit up with dozens of small but heavily armed ships converging on their position. The humans had entered a region of space controlled by a rogue faction of the Zarath Empire, a group that despised any deviation from strict loyalty to the Empire's rules. "They want us," Lyra said, her voice tight. "They will not negotiate. They will destroy us." Ethan studied the tactical map. The fleet was fast and aggressive, relying on overwhelming numbers and firepower. Normally, the Zarath ships would have crushed any intruder, but he wasn't normal. "Listen carefully," he said calmly. "They are counting on fear. They expect us to panic. They expect the crew to obey without thought. I'll show you another way." He moved quickly, issuing instructions to the crew. Lyra followed, adjusting the power systems and shields under his guidance. "Ethan, you really think you can outsmart them?" she asked, gripping the console. "I know I can," he replied. "Humans survive by thinking differently, not by doing what's expected." The first wave of attackers fired their energy beams. Most would have panicked, but Ethan anticipated every move. He directed the ship into a series of sharp maneuvers, each calculated to make the enemy overshoot or collide with each other. "Watch their patterns," he said. "Every ship reacts to the one in front of it." If we create confusion, we don't need to fight all of them at once. Using his insight, Ethan manipulated the ship's engines to generate sudden bursts of light and energy pulses, simulating multiple ships surrounding the attackers. Sensors on the enemy vessels picked up dozens of false signatures. The fleet hesitated, unsure where the real threat lay. Lyra's eyes widened. "You're creating illusions," she whispered. "That's incredible." Ethan nodded. "It's not just about strength, it's about perception. Make them think we're more than we are, and they hesitate. Hesitation can win battles without a single shot hitting us." The enemy hesitated, giving Ethan time to implement the next stage of his plan. He directed small bursts of ion pulses at the lead ship's engines, causing temporary failures. The first few vessels collided, others spun out of formation, and chaos spread through the fleet. By the time the attackers realized what had happened, Ethan had already slipped through a nearby asteroid belt, using the rocks as cover. The fleet tried to follow, but the asteroids made pursuit impossible. The humans' ship moved silently, unseen, untouchable, yet entirely within their control. Lyra could hardly believe her eyes. "You didn't even fight them directly," she said. "You didn't destroy a single ship, and yet we survived. You outsmarted them all." Ethan smiled faintly. Humans survive by seeing things others ignore. Patterns, reactions, instincts, they are weapons just as deadly as any cannon. Hours later, the ship had cleared the rogue fleet's territory. The Zarath crew was exhausted, silent, and deeply unsettled. Even they had never seen a human handle danger like this. For all their training and technology, they were unprepared for unpredictability. Lyra remained at his side, studying him closely. "You're not just clever," she said quietly. "You're something else. I can see it now. You don't just survive, you control situations, manipulate outcomes. No one taught you that, did they?" Ethan shook his head. "No one. It's instinct, experience, and the way humans think. We adapt, we learn, and we never give up no matter how hopeless it seems." She nodded slowly, a new respect in her eyes. For the first time, she realized why the aliens had underestimated him. It wasn't arrogance or ignorance. They simply couldn't comprehend the kind of intelligence, courage, and ingenuity a human could possess. Their journey continued in relative calm for a few days, the two of them sharing more than just survival strategies. Lyra opened up about her life in the Zarath Empire, the pressures to conform, and the expectations placed upon her as a top member of her society. Ethan shared stories of Earth, of humanity's struggles and victories, of small communities overcoming disasters through creativity and cooperation. Through these conversations, Lyra realized something important. Ethan's power wasn't in weapons or brute strength. It was in his mind, his ability to see solutions where others only saw problems, and his unshakable calm in the face of danger. Together, they formed a synergy neither had expected. Then one morning, a strange signal appeared on their scanners. A massive ship, unlike any they had seen, moved toward them at incredible speed. It was larger than the tournament arena and pulsing with a strange energy. The Zarath crew recoiled at the readings, unsure of how to respond. Ethan studied the ship carefully. "It's not here to negotiate," he said. "We need a plan and we need to act fast." The ship fired its first volley of energy blasts. The human crew braced as the shields absorbed the impact. Ethan's mind raced. He realized that direct combat would be suicidal. He needed another approach. "Use the asteroid belt on the left," he instructed. "We'll force it to follow and I'll create a diversion." He manipulated the ship's energy systems to create multiple decoy signatures, mimicking multiple ships flanking the enemy. The massive vessel adjusted its course, following what it believed were real threats. Ethan's ship darted around asteroids, weaving unpredictably. The enemy ship fired blindly, damaging asteroids and debris but failing to touch Ethan's vessel. Lyra, working alongside him, adjusted power distribution, enhanced shields, and managed communications. She had never seen anyone react so calmly under such pressure. The ugliest and tallest prize, she realized, was now a partner in survival, not just a companion. Finally, Ethan implemented the last stage of his plan. Using a precise burst of ion energy, he disrupted the massive ship's navigation systems temporarily, causing it to veer off course and collide with a dense asteroid cluster. The impact sent shockwaves through space, but Ethan's ship was safely beyond the danger zone. The crew erupted in astonishment. Even the Zarath navigators, who had seen countless battles, were stunned. Lyra, still catching her breath, looked at Ethan with new understanding. You just defeated that ship without a single weapon hitting it, she said. He nodded, quietly adjusting the controls. Humans survive by thinking differently. Sometimes the best weapon is a mind that others cannot predict. Days passed as they continued their journey. Each challenge they faced revealed more of Ethan's true power. Rogue mercenaries, unstable asteroid fields, and unpredictable gravitational storms were no longer threats. They were opportunities for Ethan to demonstrate his ingenuity. Lyra, once skeptical, now trusted him implicitly. Together, they were more than just human and Zarath. They were a team, combining skill, strategy, and courage. One evening, as they drifted through a quiet stretch of space, Lyra spoke. "I have to admit something," she said softly. "I thought this would be a punishment being given to you. I thought you would be weak, but I was wrong. You are not just a survivor, you are extraordinary." Ethan glanced at her, a faint smile on his face. "And you are not just a prize," he said. "You are my partner. Without you, I wouldn't have made it this far." The words carried weight, and Lyra felt a shift inside her. She realized that the Zarath had underestimated both of them. They had tried to mock a human with what they thought was a worthless prize. Instead, they had created a partnership that neither species could have anticipated. As the stars stretched endlessly around them, Ethan and Lyra continued forward, their bond growing stronger with every challenge. Each obstacle, each threat was met with creativity, strategy, and courage. And each time Ethan's true power, the human mind, adaptable, unpredictable, unstoppable, was revealed. For the first time, Lyra truly understood what the aliens had failed to see. Strength was not measured by appearance or by weapons. It was measured by intelligence, courage, adaptability, and the ability to inspire others. And Ethan embodied all of these qualities quietly, without arrogance and without fear. The universe around them was vast and dangerous, but together they knew they could face anything. And somewhere in the stars, the Zarath who had mocked them began to reconsider their assumptions about humanity. Ethan smiled faintly as he adjusted the ship's course. There were more challenges ahead, more dangers to navigate, and more tests of skill and courage. But for the first time in the galaxy, a human and his prize were not just surviving. They were thriving, demonstrating a power no one had truly understood until now. And for Ethan, this was only the beginning. The glow of the planet came into view long before the ship entered orbit. Ethan and Lyra watched silently from the observation deck. It was a beautiful world, blue and green, with swirling clouds and vast oceans. But beauty did not erase the tension that had built over their journey. The Zarath Empire would not easily let them return home, especially after witnessing Ethan's unpredictable victories. "Everything we've done, it doesn't matter if they stop us here," Lyra said quietly, her tall frame leaning against the console. Her voice held concern but also determination. "They will send their best forces to make sure you don't reach your planet." Ethan didn't respond immediately. He studied the scanners, observing the patterns of the approaching fleet. "They think power is measured by numbers and weapons," he said finally. "But humans measure power differently. We adapt, we improvise. And we never accept defeat as the only outcome." The Zarath forces were indeed waiting. A blockade had formed in orbit, massive ships stretching across the planet's upper atmosphere. Each vessel was bristling with weapons, energy shields, and advanced technology designed to crush intruders. The fleet commander hailed Ethan's ship. "Human, surrender immediately. Any attempt to land will be met with destruction." Ethan met Lyra's eyes and nodded. "We don't negotiate," he said calmly. "We find a way forward." Lyra exhaled, impressed. "I've never seen anyone face them like this," she admitted. "Not even the best generals of the Zarath." The first step was distraction. Ethan directed the ship to deploy small drones, each emitting energy signatures that mimicked a fleet of identical ships. From afar, the Zarath saw dozens of vessels approaching, their sensors unable to distinguish the decoys from the real ship. Chaos rippled through the enemy formation as commanders tried to recalibrate. "They can't target all of them at once," Ethan said. "Their strength is in numbers, but their numbers are predictable. We make them unpredictable." Lyra adjusted the ship's shields, creating layers of energy reflections that further confused enemy sensors. Ethan guided the vessel through a series of tight maneuvers, weaving between planets, moons, and asteroid fragments. Each move was precise, calculated to exploit the aliens' reliance on predictable patterns. One of the Zarath ships attempted a direct attack. Ethan anticipated the trajectory and redirected it with a sudden burst of energy from the ship's engines, creating a gravitational shift that sent the attacking vessel spiraling harmlessly into space. The rest of the fleet hesitated, unsure of how to react. "You're manipulating physics," Lyra whispered, awed. "I've never seen a human do this before." Ethan smiled faintly. "It's not magic, it's understanding cause and effect, observation and timing. That's how humans survive when stronger forces threaten us." With the blockade in disarray, Ethan executed the next stage of his plan. He sent the ship into the planet's atmosphere at an angle designed to appear suicidal. The enemy hesitated, unsure if the human would crash or find another method. At the last moment, Ethan activated the ship's atmospheric boosters, propelling it safely through turbulent winds and magnetic storms, landing on the planet's surface in a hidden valley far from any city or station. The Zarath fleet erupted in frustration, unable to follow him down the narrow atmospheric corridor. Lyra exhaled, her hands trembling slightly from the adrenaline. You actually did it. You got us here safely." Ethan nodded. "And we're not safe yet. This is only the beginning. They'll try again. We need a plan to protect the planet, the people, and ourselves." They exited the ship, stepping onto the soil of Ethan's home world. The air was familiar and comforting. Birds flew overhead, and the distant sound of waves crashing against cliffs reached them. But there was no time to relax. Sensors indicated incoming troops from the Zarath fleet. Ethan studied the terrain. The valley was narrow, flanked by cliffs on either side, with a river cutting through the middle. "We can make this work to our advantage," he said. "They rely on overwhelming numbers. Here we can limit their options." Lyra's eyes widened. "You're going to use the land against them?" "Exactly," Ethan replied. "Humans survive by using every tool at their disposal. Terrain, strategy, and ingenuity are weapons as strong as lasers or plasma cannons." He set traps and barriers, using natural formations to hide ambush points. Lyra assisted, using her technical skills to create energy nets, automated defenses, and sensors to detect approaching enemies. Together, they transformed the valley into a fortress that leveraged intelligence and preparation over brute force. The first wave of Zarath troops arrived under the cover of the evening sky. They were confident, expecting an easy victory over the humans and their prize. But as they entered the valley, Ethan's traps activated. Energy nets ensnared vehicles, magnetic pulses disabled weapons, and hidden mines created chaos. The troops were disoriented, vulnerable, and confused. Ethan moved quickly, coordinating strikes and directing Lyra to target critical points. He was everywhere at once, anticipating moves, adapting to changes, and exploiting weaknesses. Lyra marveled at his clarity under pressure. "I've never seen anyone command a battle like this," she whispered. The Zarath commander, observing from above, was stunned. "How is this possible?" he muttered. "He's a human, he should be weak. Yet he is controlling the battlefield." Ethan's tactics weren't just physical, they were psychological. He predicted fear, hesitation, and arrogance in his enemies and used them to his advantage. Soldiers panicked, commanders made mistakes, and the once confident force struggled to regain control. Hours of battle passed, with Ethan and Lyra working in perfect sync. They didn't just survive, they dominated. Humans, using intelligence, resourcefulness, and courage, overcame an enemy far superior in technology and numbers. Finally, the Zarath forces retreated, battered, and demoralized. The commander signaled withdrawal, realizing that continued engagement would only lead to more losses. Ethan and Lyra watched as the enemy fleet disappeared into space, leaving the planet safe for the moment. Lyra turned to Ethan, awe and respect in her eyes. "You did it. You defended the planet without even leading an army in the traditional way. You outsmarted them all." Ethan shook his head. "We did it. Alone, I could survive, but together, we can protect much more than ourselves. That's the real strength of humans. We think beyond what others expect." Lyra smiled, finally letting go of the pride that had made her see herself as a prize. She realized that she wasn't just part of the plan, she was a partner, a force equal to Ethan in their combined ingenuity. Word of the victory spread quickly. Other planets in the sector, long oppressed by the Zarath, began to see humans differently. Ethan's actions proved that even one human, guided by intellect, courage, and adaptability, could challenge an empire. The image of him with Lyra, standing firm and unyielding, became a symbol of hope, a reminder that strength was not always measured in weapons or size. As night fell on the valley, Ethan and Lyra stood together, looking out at the horizon. The Zarath had underestimated them both, but the galaxy had begun to notice. "You really are extraordinary," Lyra said softly. "I thought I was just helping you, but I think you've changed the way the universe sees humans." Ethan smiled, glancing at the stars. "Humans survive by refusing to accept limits. We adapt, we endure, and we rise when others fall. That's our power. And with allies like you, we can achieve even more." She looked at him, a new understanding shining in her eyes. She realized that the so-called ugliest and tallest prize the aliens had mocked was not a prize at all. She was a partner, a vital part of the strength that humans brought to the galaxy. Together, they had turned mockery into victory, weakness into power. Ethan knew the Zarath would try again. The Empire would not easily accept defeat, especially at the hands of a human. But he was ready. Every challenge had only strengthened his resolve, sharpened his mind, and revealed the true potential of humanity. And as the stars sparkled overhead, he felt a quiet satisfaction. The journey had been dangerous, exhausting, and unpredictable, but they had survived, and not just survived. They had shown the galaxy what humans were truly capable of. For the first time, Lyra understood the truth. Strength was not measured by size, appearance, or even weapons. It was measured by intelligence, courage, creativity, and the ability to act when others hesitated. And Ethan embodied all of these qualities. The Zarath had given him a mockery of a prize, but in reality, they had given him a partner capable of challenging the entire empire. Together, Ethan and Lyra had turned their mockery into triumph, their underestimated abilities into unstoppable power. The galaxy had begun to take notice, and humanity was no longer the species the Zarath could dismiss. And Ethan knew that their greatest challenges were still ahead. The planet's skies burned with the glow of approaching fleets. Ethan and Lyra stood on the high cliffs overlooking the main city. From this vantage point, the sheer scale of the Zarath forces became clear. Hundreds of ships moved in formation, each one a weapon designed to annihilate anything in its path. But Ethan did not flinch. He had seen impossible odds before, and each time humans had found a way through. "They've brought everything they have," Lyra said, her voice steady but tense. "They want to make an example of you, of us." Ethan studied the fleet, analyzing patterns in movement, firing sequences, and coordination. "They think numbers alone will win," he said. "They think their weapons make them invincible, but they've never faced humans like us before. They've never faced creativity, adaptability, and courage." Lyra nodded, understanding what he meant. She had seen his brilliance in the asteroid fields against rogue fleets and in the valley ambushes. Now, on a planetary scale, his strategy would have to be even more precise, even more daring. "We need to protect the city," Ethan continued. "But not just by hiding behind defenses. We need to force them to overreach, make them panic. Make them see that humans are not so easily defeated." He issued orders to the city's defense systems and to Lyra, who coordinated with the engineers and scientists who had helped modify the energy grids. Together, they prepared a plan that combined human ingenuity with advanced Zarath technology. It was risky, unpredictable, and bold, exactly the kind of strategy that relied on unpredictability, a human specialty. The first wave of ships entered the atmosphere, their weapons firing indiscriminately. Ethan's traps activated. Energy nets rose from the ground, magnetic pulses disrupted engines, and narrow corridors channeled ships into areas where collisions were almost inevitable. Many of the enemy ships spun out of control, colliding with each other or crashing into the cliffs. Lyra monitored the systems, her eyes sharp. "They underestimated our defenses," she said, awe in her voice. "I've never seen humans do this before." Ethan didn't respond immediately. He was already thinking 3 steps ahead, anticipating what the next wave would do and how to counter it. "Keep the energy grid steady," he instructed. "We'll force them to overextend. They rely on precision and we'll make them lose it." The second wave of attacks came, faster and more coordinated than the first. Ethan's ship-based tactics had to adapt to planetary scale. He directed drones to mimic additional ships, creating illusions of movement in multiple directions. Enemy sensors reported dozens of vessels, some real, some false. Confusion spread among the commanders, hesitation replacing confidence. Ethan moved like a conductor leading an orchestra. Each drone, each pulse of energy, each maneuver was timed perfectly. Lyra adjusted the city's shields, diverting power to critical points while leaving openings to lure the enemy into traps. Together, they turned chaos into advantage. The Zarath commander, observing from orbit, was growing frustrated. How can one human orchestrate this? He is only one being. His mind cannot contain this battlefield. But Ethan's mind did not need to be contained. It adapted. He anticipated fear, overconfidence, and impatience, using them as tools. Enemy ships collided, firing sequences malfunctioned, and their coordinated formation crumbled. The once mighty fleet faltered before the human and his partner. Lyra finally spoke, her voice carrying both admiration and realization. I understand now. The Zarath see strength as weapons, size, and numbers. But humans see opportunity, possibility. We don't rely on what's given, we create what's needed. Ethan glanced at her, a small smile on his face. And together we are unstoppable. That's the human advantage. Not just survival, but creativity, adaptability, and courage when others falter. The battle raged on. Ethan's strategies became bolder. He used the terrain of the city, narrow streets, and deep valleys to funnel enemy forces into traps. Energy pulses disrupted targeting systems, and illusions of additional ships forced miscalculations. The Zarath, despite their advanced technology, could not predict human ingenuity. Finally, the fleet began to retreat, battered and demoralized. Commanders realized that their superior numbers meant nothing when facing a mind that could anticipate and manipulate outcomes. Their leader issued a withdrawal acknowledging defeat, for now. The city erupted in cheers. Citizens had watched the battle unfold, stunned by the victory. Humans, they realized, were not the weak species the Zarath had claimed. They were clever, resilient, and capable of turning any challenge into a triumph. Lyra turned to Ethan, her eyes wide with amazement. You've done it. You've defended the planet, outsmarted an empire, and proven what humans can do. Ethan shook his head. It's not just me. It's everyone who adapts, who thinks differently, and who refuses to give up. Humans survive because we believe in possibilities others can't see. The Zarath fleet had withdrawn, but Ethan knew this would not be the last attempt. The Empire had underestimated him and humanity, and they would return stronger and more determined. But for the first time, the galaxy had begun to see humans differently. They were no longer the weak, fragile species dismissed in whispers. They were a force to be reckoned with. Lyra placed her hand on his shoulder. I used to think I was just a prize, a reward for victory. But now I see the truth. We are partners. Together we are unstoppable. Ethan looked out over the horizon, the stars reflecting in his eyes. And the Empire has just learned a lesson. Strength is not measured by weapons, size, or numbers. It's measured by courage, ingenuity, and the will to survive and protect what you care about. That's humanity's true power. In the days that followed, the planet rebuilt. The people, inspired by Ethan's victories, began to prepare for future threats with a renewed sense of hope and confidence. Technology was adapted, strategies were revised, and citizens trained not just in physical combat but in thinking, planning, and working together. Lyra stood by Ethan as they watched the sun rise over the rebuilt city. The Zarath may return, she said quietly, but they will never underestimate us again. You've changed the way they see humans. You've changed the way the galaxy sees humans. Ethan smiled, looking at the horizon. It's not just me. It's the human spirit, our ingenuity, courage, and persistence. That's something no empire can ever take away. Together, they walked through the streets, greeted by citizens who now looked at them not with fear, but with respect and admiration. Children waved, inspired by the courage they had witnessed. Leaders sought advice, eager to learn from the human who had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. Even the Zarath, observing from afar, could not deny what they had seen. Their calculations had failed, their assumptions shattered. A single human, using intelligence, strategy, and courage, had challenged an entire fleet and forced them to retreat. Ethan and Lyra's partnership became legendary. The ugliest and tallest prize, once mocked, was now recognized as an essential part of the victory. Lyra's skills, insight, and courage complemented Ethan's ingenuity, proving that strength comes from collaboration, respect, and understanding. qualities the Zarath had long ignored. As the planet settled into peace, Ethan looked at Lyra and said quietly, "The Empire will try again and the galaxy will continue to challenge us. But we've shown them the truth. Humans survive, adapt, and rise when others falter. That's our advantage. And with partners like you, there's nothing we cannot face." Lyra nodded, a smile lighting her face. "I understand now. We are stronger together, and the galaxy will learn to respect humans, not for our weapons, but for our minds, our hearts, and our courage." The stars shimmered overhead, endless and unyielding. Ethan knew the journey was far from over, but for the first time he felt the true weight of victory. Humans had been underestimated, dismissed, and mocked. But through courage, intelligence, and partnership, they had proven themselves capable of greatness. And in that moment, humanity was no longer a species to be ignored. They were a force of ingenuity, resilience, and unstoppable will. The Empire had learned a lesson, the galaxy had begun to take notice, and Ethan, alongside Lyra, had become a symbol of the power that could rise from determination, intellect, and the unbreakable spirit of a human. As night fell over the planet, Ethan and Lyra stood together on the cliffs, looking at the stars. The universe was vast, full of dangers and challenges, but they were ready. Together, they had survived the impossible, outsmarted an empire, and shown the galaxy that humans were more than weak and fragile. They were unstoppable when they refused to accept limits. And that was only the beginning.